Guys, I want the old Trump back. As we'll talk about on today's show, he is crushing it when it comes to the culture stuff, but his economic policy is a complete 180 from his first term when the economy was booming, things were going fantastic, and he needs to return to that right now if Republicans want any shot at being successful in future elections. Everyone knows right now that yesterday was Trump's big liberation day, and this is the day where he announced all the tariffs that he would impose on other countries' goods. And what I want to do right now is I want to talk about the truths and the lies of the tariffs right now, because there are several for both, actually, and a lot of people are only talking about one. I want to be fair in this. I'm a big Trump supporter. If you haven't watched my show before, I love Trump. But on this, I want to be honest, because there are some lies about it. And again, there are some truths as well that I'll get to the end. But first, I want to talk about the lies. The most obvious of this is the tariff chart itself. So Trump released this chart to help people kind of see the tariffs, which I appreciate because it's very transparent. And basically what it is, you can see all the tariffs being levied on other countries. They have their tariff that they're putting on us and then ours. So I want to show that to you right now. You can see it right here. And you, at first glance, you see this and you're like, China, 67% tariff on US goods? Like, we are getting ripped off. And China's our enemy, so you're like, okay, maybe. But then you go to European Union, 39%? Are you crazy? Why are we letting our allies put a 39% tariff on us? The problem with this, guys, is that this chart with all the tariffs are not true. None of it's true. Like, these are not accurate numbers in the slightest. They're not even close to accurate, by the way. You can see on there that Vietnam, for instance, has a 90% tariff on us. In reality, it's actually 9%, which it's too high. I got no problem with us trying to negotiate that down, but it's not 90%. That's not accurate. They're not even close. And so what those numbers really represent and how the kind of Trump administration found this is that this is the trade deficit that we have with that country. A trade deficit is when we buy more from them than they buy from us. And you might be thinking, okay, well, that's good. We're penalizing other countries for that deficit. But the problem with that is that there is no evidence that a trade deficit is bad in any way. There's really not. If we look at Switzerland, for example, it would make sense that we have a trade deficit with them because we're a massive country in terms of population, but also we're very wealthy. And so not only do we have a lot of people who are going to buy a lot of stuff, but we're wealthy, so we have a lot of money to buy that stuff. And you have to think to yourself, how could the population of Switzerland possibly buy as much from us, America, as we could from them? So it's impossible. That's why there's a trade deficit, and that's fine. To take this to a more granular level, there's this Hawaiian restaurant. This is just an example I thought of. There's a Hawaiian restaurant I love. It's where we live, right? It's pretty close to it. I go there about twice a month, and I have a huge trade deficit with this restaurant because I go there and I spend about $40 a month at this restaurant, and they never buy anything from me, ever. I've never once has the restaurant approached me, bought something. I've never really, made a product before, I guess. So I don't know what they would buy me, but they never come to my house and been like, hey, I like your cup. Let me buy that cup. They've never done that. And so there's a massive trade deficit between me and this Hawaiian restaurant, and it's fine. It's fine because as it turns out, I like the value of the restaurant. What they're providing is good. So I have no problem buying a lot from them. And that is a trade deficit, and it's fine. So again, why would we use the tariffs? Why would we levy tariffs on our allies who are providing valuable products to us? It makes no sense. But that's the first lie. The second lie was actually said by both Trump and JD Vance this week. And this is a little bit more of a broad cultural one that I actually have a pretty big problem with because it's just, it gives way for populist socialism, which we're seeing a lot in the country right now. And it's something that JD Vance and Trump kind of ironically actually agree with, like the Bernie Sanders and the AOC's on, which is that both of them said that the middle class is getting hollowed out right now. That's one thing. They also said that manufacturing has been leaving the U.S. and with that the economy has basically been suffering over the last 40 years. And JD Vance makes his argument, which is if things haven't been going well over the last 40 years, why are we going to keep trying those same things? That's a fair argument. The problem is that the premise of that argument is completely false. It is not true that the economy is not doing well. Nobody would rather live, this is just one example, no one would rather live in the 80s than right now in terms of the economy. Absolutely not. In terms of culture, absolutely. Like who wouldn't want to go to the 80s? I was born in 2001, so I never got to see the 80s. I never even got to see the 90s. But I think I can speak for everyone in saying, in terms of culture, returning to the 80s would be freaking awesome. But in terms of the economy, there's no way. No one wants to do that. Here are some charts, too. This isn't just a claim that I'm making. Here are some charts that are really important for manufacturing. You can see this one. This is just since 1997 to 2024. You can see that manufacturing in the US has actually almost doubled. So, and again, this is this century. This isn't like me taking data from 1980 or 1990. Like, this is 1997 to today. Manufacturing is doubling. So this idea, and can we do better? I'm fine with that. If we want to talk about policies, how we can do better, I'm totally cool with that. But the lie that people are saying is manufacturing is not doing well in America. And that is false. It is patently false. Right now we have a doubling over the last 20 years. If you want to say, hey, we don't want to double it. We want to triple it. Cool. Let's talk about that. But tariffs aren't the way to do it. And again, using the argument of we haven't tried tariffs in the past, let's try them to get manufacturing going, is completely shot in the face of a graph like this. Because if you want to triple it, you should do more of what we were already doing over the last 20 years. This brings me to the next point. And this one's a little bit more general, but I think more important than manufacturing personally. And this is the class status in America. You can see this chart right here, and it's actually really fascinating. This is over the last, more or less the same time period, like the last 40 years, and you can see this is the class size. And the lie that you've been hearing is that the middle class has been collapsing. And if you look at the graph here, what you see, the middle class is the blue, the darker blue. It really hasn't changed. It's changed just a little bit. But even still, when you look at where the middle class has gone for the small change that has happened, you notice that upper middle class has gotten far bigger and lower middle class and poverty has gone way down. So again, that refutes socialism, that refutes all the arguments that evil billionaires are corrupting our country, because if you look at the numbers, more people are becoming in middle class from the lower tiers, and more middle class people are going up in upper middle class than ever before. And the middle class really has not changed much. And if they have changed, it's only gotten better. So that's one of the biggest lies. And again, that one is particularly problematic for me from the Trump administration, because Trump is supposed to be like the conservative. He's supposed to, propel the Republican Party forward. But that talking point from J.D. Vance and from Donald Trump is a socialist one. And if it were true, I would say, hey, let's, take a look at it. But it's not true. And so I think it's very damaging. The last lie before I talk about the truths is, of course, that tariffs are somehow retaliatory against other countries. That's the whole basis for all of this, is they're ripping us off, so we're going to retaliate and make it fair. The problem is that they really hardly ever are. How tariffs work is, this is just an example. If we have a 10% tariff on Vietnam, American companies have to pay a 10% tax to the US government to buy the goods from Vietnam. So at no point did Vietnam pay that tax. Never. It is simply a tax on American businesses. And I've seen people in my comments, I appreciate your comments, but guys, I've seen people in the comments talking about why other countries, for instance, would possibly do this if it's so bad for the economy. That their argument is, why are other countries ripping us off if we can't rip them off back? Why would they do it in the first place? Here's the thing, guys. If you look at who is putting the hardest tariffs on the United States, you've got Southeastern Asia countries and African countries. And I'm bewildered that people would look at Somalia and be like, that is the economy that I want to emulate. That's the one. When I look at economic policy, Somalia really speaks to me. Or Thailand. Thailand's a beautiful place, guys. I don't want their economy. I don't want anything to do with that economy, and neither should you. So that's not a good argument of, other countries are doing it. No other country has the economy like the United States. I don't want to be Somalia. So those are the lies, and those are important to talk about. But obviously I'm a big Trump fan, and there are two truths about the tariffs that are equally as important as the lies. The first is that they are great for negotiations. They really are, and Trump talks about this, and other people have talked about this. If the goal is ultimately to eliminate all tariffs, then I'm all for it, because it means less taxes on American corporations. That is my shtick, because I'm an actual conservative. I don't want taxes on businesses. It's bad for GDP, it's bad for production, it's bad for the economy. So if Kenya, for instance, has a 1% tariff on US goods, I think we should go to Kenya and we should say, Kenya, we're putting 100% tariff on every single good coming out of the United States until you take off that 1% tariff. And that's retaliatory because what that means is that Americans will never buy from Kenya ever again. And so Kenya's economy will then suffer. And then Kenya will fold immediately because they want American consumers. Because going back to what I was talking about before with trade deficits, we buy more things than anyone else. And so they need us. And so if we put 100% tariff on them in order to take down that 1% tariff, they will fold immediately. And this actually happened after Trump announced his tariff plan just this week. So I believe Canada, there could be other countries, but these are kind of the big ones. I believe Canada and Israel are dropping their tariffs after Trump announced the reciprocal tariffs, which is fantastic. I say reciprocal tariffs, like I talked about earlier. They're not actual reciprocal tariffs. If they were, they'd be closer to 1% for most countries as opposed to like 30%. In any case, it's fantastic that Canada and Israel dropped their tariffs. We should lower ours now as well. That should be the whole point, is to, again, put political pressure, put the economic pressure on people, and then lower all of them. That's a great truth, and Trump talks about that. And if that's what he's doing, fantastic. The second truth is that tariffs are good for a few select industries that you're trying to protect. For instance, if another country is undercutting a large U.S. industry and hurting it. So like in some cases, we could, for instance, like if steel, we're trying to protect U.S. steel. U.S. produces a lot of steel. We really don't need to import it from other places. And say China is trying to undercut us with their prices. We would be wise to put a reciprocal tariff on that country that is undercutting us to incentivize American companies to buy from the United States instead. That could be a good use. But levying taxes on everyone is not doing that in certain cases. So the question with all of this, guys, is why talk about it? Because I haven't talked about I talk about the economy occasionally on the show. I focus a lot on culture and social policy. But the reason why I'm talking about it, and I mentioned this on the other episode this week that I talked about tariffs, but I'm talking about it because I think, and this is one thing I love about Trump, is I think Trump is pragmatic. And I think he loves the MAGA movement. Like, I think he genuinely loves MAGA. I think he loves everyone he meets when he goes to the rallies. I think he is a man of the people. He loves it. And I think if MAGA stands up and says, like, this doesn't work. It's not working. It wasn't a very good idea. I'm not sure where he got it. I'm not sure what's going on. He had some economic advisors. Like, Trump's not an ideologue out here. He went to a finance school. That's cool, but he didn't study economics. And I don't think that he's just bought into tariffs. I think he's listening to certain people. And I think if MAGA stands up and says, this doesn't work, we want to lower prices and not inflation, which tariffs, again, they cause inflation because they're higher taxes on businesses. I think if MAGA does that, Trump will listen to that, and I think he will change course. Did you know that hundreds of thousands of Americans are going to lose millions of dollars this year because they forget to file their taxes? Guys, this year, 88% of filers will get a tax return of at least $3,000 back, but many are choosing not to file because they think they're going to lose money or owe money, and then they leave money on the table. And that's why I've partnered with Quick Tax America. Quick Tax America has already gotten its average tax returner over $4,000 back from the IRS just this year. And unlike the other services, they're not raising rates just because it's April. All federal tax returns with them are only $69. It's a completely transparent price because it is their only price, no matter how complicated your taxes are. And they run dozens of simulations on your taxes to make sure that they get you the best and biggest return possible. Quick Tax America does all the work for you as well. All you got to do is upload your files, answer a few basic questions, and then schedule a 15-minute finish your return call with a tax professional, and they do all the rest of the work. So go check them out right now, guys, at quicktaxamerica.com. Or you can go to the link in the description below. CBS News just released some shocking polls about how Americans feel about Trump's economy, and these were actually released just before the tariffs, so these will most likely go down even more, unfortunately. But I have to show them because it's important for people to see this, because it means a lot when it comes to future elections. Here are the polls, and it's pretty shocking, frankly. There's 4, and if you're just listening, I'll read them out for you, but I'll put them up on the screen if you're watching. The first question is expectations versus now. Trump's policies are making you financially. And again, this is like what people were expecting. So from January versus now. And the people who said better off originally was 42% and now is down to 23%. Worse off was 28% and now it's 42%. the same 30% to 35%. So the same has mostly stayed the same. Overall, though, people were expecting the economy to be much better, and now they are sad because they believe it is much worse than before. And again, that's even worse before the Joe Biden administration, which is crazy to me. I don't agree with that poll, but that is the reality. The second poll, just simply condition of the U.S. economy. Good in February was 33%, now 33%, bad 60%, 60%. So what does that mean? It means since February, and granted it's only been, a month and a half maybe, I don't know exactly when that poll was taken, sometime in February, the economy has not changed at all. And that's a problem for the Trump administration because it's not like people thought the economy was already great and it's just stayed great. They thought it was bad and they expected Trump to do better. So that doesn't look great for the Trump administration. And I'll talk about in a sec how Trump can turn this around because he absolutely can. But I want to go through these last two that you can see. Is your income keeping up with inflation? 24% say yes, 76% say no. I don't know who the 24% are. I want to know what their jobs are if they're keeping up with inflation right now. And then finally, this last one, how do you feel about retirement savings? 70% say anxious, 30% say secure. And I'm sure that number is going to plummet when you look at what's happened with the stock market. Now, look, the stock market's not the biggest indication. I understand they rise and fall. And if you have the cash on hand, you're investing right now because it's the dip and it's fantastic and all that. That's great. I'm not saying that the stock market is the end all be all. But what I am saying is when it comes to retirement savings, your IRA and 401k are tied to the stock market. And so people are looking at this and they are very afraid. It's not good, guys. Trump's number one priority right now needs to be fixing the economy because all the good he's done a lot of good. All the good with immigration, with the culture wars, with Doge will go by the wayside if the economy is bad. And then we're going to get 4 or maybe even 8 years of Kamala Harris or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And that right there would be a nightmare. But here's the good news. People expect Trump to do well in the economy already because he did so good in the first term. So if Trump will turn it around, they will see the dichotomy between Biden and the Biden-Kamala Harris thing and Donald Trump. And they're going to love it and they're going to want to keep loving it. And Republicans will continue to win elections. Hey guys, I wanted to let you know about a deal I'm running right now. My book is only $9.99 on Amazon right now. It's called A New Cult. It's up on the bookshelf over there. You can go check it out right now. The link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you haven't already, go down below, like the video, subscribe to my channel, and watch another video.